As I record this today, it's the same day that the Trump administration's FBI is raiding the home of John Bolton. You know, the guy that used to work in the Trump administration, the uber hawk who wanted him to bomb Iran so badly, the vicious neocon responsible for so much of America's horrible foreign policy. Well, Senator Paul had an opinion. Senator Rand Paul had an opinion on this, and this is what he had to say on X today. John Bolton has done a lot of damage to the life, liberty, and treasure of so many Americans. This is true. Rand Paul continues, if he also is found to have broken the law regarding national security, it will be some small form of justice for the evil he has perpetrated over the years. Now, for anti-war conservatives, libertarians like myself, that's just obvious. John Bolton's a horrible neoconservative, a warmonger, and has been called that many times by people across the ideological spectrum. What I want to concentrate today is how much the Democrats have changed their tune on John Bolton. When Trump's Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI under John Bolton, Democrats and CNN and MSNBC were like, oh, this is justified. He probably did commit crimes. And what were those crimes? He was allegedly had classified information. Today we're hearing that Bolton has classified information. But the Democrats and their pundits and legacy media sound a little different this time around. I'm going to play this clip from the beginning of Trump's first term when John Bolton was being considered for the cabinet. This, and pay attention to this clip with Chris Matthews interviewing Rand Paul lays out beautifully what Rand Paul just had to say about John Bolton, his character, his record, how awful he is. But primarily it's Chris Matthews, a Democrat, a left-leaning pundit on MSNBC for years. This is how Democrats on MSNBC used to talk about John Bolton.
Well, I know who hasn't learned his lesson because it's who he is essentially, and that's John Bolton. That guy won't quit. His desire for power and to wheedle his way into every Republican administration is relentless. The neocon network helps him. Here he is, John Bolton, the man NBC reports as being, I love this phrase, actually I hate it, eyed for Deputy Secretary of State, has advocated for bombing Iran. Here he was just last year. This is Bolton.
Just as Israel twice before has struck nuclear weapons programs in the hands of hostile states, I'm afraid, given the circumstances, that's the only real option open to us now.
Right now, or are you saying leading into the future?
No, I would have done this 5 or 6 years ago because the earlier you strike, the more damage you can do.
Oh, my God. Bolton on Fox, an unbelievable combination. That was a strong booster. Of course, he was of the Iraq invasion, still is. In 2002, Bolton peddled bad information about that country's weapons program. Quote, we are confident, he said at the time, that Saddam Hussein has hidden weapons of mass destruction and production facilities in Iraq. Well, last May, Bolton continued to defend the invasion. That's last month, telling the Washington Examiner, a conservative newspaper, I still think the decision to overthrow Saddam was correct. I love the way it's so prissy, correct. He echoed that sentiment as recently as yesterday. Here we go.
I was a member of George W. Bush's administration. He supported the Iraq War. Of course I supported the Iraq War. I've written on the subject, some people would probably say endlessly, about what the lessons are to be learned from it. I've put it out on the record. I've never hidden my views from anybody, and I absolutely don't back away from them.
Senator Paul, isn't it interesting that the ones who backed the Iraq war also back going into Libya, also back going into Syria, and they always have one like in a little Pez dispenser, a little candy dispenser. They always have the next war they want us to fight. There's always one they pushed about another war comes out. They always want a new war.
That's how Democrats used to talk about John Bolton on MSNBC. So obviously Chris Matthews was no fan of John Bolton back then. And this thing's happened since where, many Democrats see Trump and Putin as the same. So if you're against what Trump's doing with Putin, if you're against diplomatic efforts, which John Bolton definitely is, he wants war. He doesn't want us talking to people. Democrats, they're so twisted up about Trump and Putin, now like John Bolton. John Bolton is a regular on CNN. He's a regular contributor. They talk about him glowingly on MSNBC. I was so tickled by this. And once again, this is the day of the raid. You're going to have more of this coming from Democrats. This is Congressman Claire McCaskill, a Democrat. This is what she had to say on MSNBC today about her former colleague, John Bolton. Dude, this is too much. This is how MSNBC Democrats talk now. Compare this to how Chris Matthews talked 10 years ago or whatever.
In fact, even before the summit occurred, he said that Trump had handed Putin a win. In fact, Trump went to social media to criticize Bolton for those comments. And now, a few days later, we have this. We don't know there's a link, but we certainly know this is a president who has promised retribution.
Yeah, this is chilling. It really is. Listen, John Bolton and I disagreed on many things back in the days when I was serving in public office, but I don't think very many people that know John Bolton would argue that his beliefs were intellectually sound. You could disagree with him, and that he gave a lot to this country in terms of time and his intellect and his work ethic. And clearly this is retribution. Clearly this is using the FBI in a way that not only tarnishes the FBI, but it tarnishes our country. I mean, this is what they do in countries where they don't have rule of law. This is what happens when despots take over, like Putin. And John Bolton has always been critical of how, I mean, he about lost it when Trump wanted to invite the Taliban to Camp David.
That would have been great.
It's chilling. Now, do I think they're ever going to have evidence to convict this man of anything in a court of law with a jury? No, they won't. But they can make him miserable.
So, you can't, I mean, this is absolutely disgusting, the hypocrisy of these people. And John Bolton wanted what's best for this country, and he's intellectually sound. Well, Chris Matthews 10 years ago on your channel explained why he wasn't, why he's every bit the monster that Democrats used to think he was, and how Rand Paul described him on the day of his home being raided. It's just baffling. And this is, like I said, this has just been within a few hours. I found these clips and what these people do. And look, she's like, oh, this is what banana republics do, and this is what dictators do. This is what President Biden did to Donald Trump, and every Democrat on MSNBC and everywhere thought it was great, thought it was justified, did not think it was third world, and now that the shoe's on the other foot, and they're doing it to protect John Bolton. Do I think this might be politicized? Yes. Am I confident that it is? I don't know. But I do know that gushing over John Bolton and how great he is and he wants what's best for this country on MSNBC is the biggest bunch of crap, hypocritical nonsense that I've ever seen. So I just wanted to share that hypocrisy with you today because people like John Bolton, neocons like him, they never change. They're always for warmongering. John Bolton and his ilk never change. The Democratic Party, that's an entirely different story.